Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Education Committee of 9th of November 2023. And I'll just start with the agenda, with the normal apologies for absence. I think everyone...
None I'm aware of, Chair.
Councillor Wallace.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Wallace. Okay, thank you, Councillor Campbell. And any declarations of interest? None? Great, thanks. Just before we move on to the main paper about the report on digital learning and teaching strategy, I'm delighted to say that we have two of our schools with us today, and they're both going to do a short presentation for us. And I think first up we have Mr MacDonald with Caius and Miriam, who are going to talk about digital learning at Weedon Hill.
And James Scott, the teacher.
Okay.
James Scott, the teacher.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll start that again. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mrs Thompson, Jem Thompson. I am a Primary 1 teacher at Weedon Hill Primary School, and I'm joined today by two of our fantastic Primary 7s, Caius and Mariam, and we're here to tell you about how we innovatively use technology in our school and nursery class. Now, as you'll see from the next screen, we are so lucky to have access to a wealth of resources and platforms in our school, which our children use in their lessons and at lunchtime clubs to help to develop their skills as part of the digital culture that they live in. We realise that our children are digital natives. They're born into this world, so they are born into the world where everything is digital, and they've just had to get on with it because that's all they've ever known. As adults, we have had to learn so much, and we continue to learn so much as the advancements take place, what seems like daily sometimes. So as digital immigrants, we realise we've got a lot to learn. In part of that, we know that we need to support our parents so that they can support their learners to get ready for life, learning and work. So as part of that, we've hosted parent workshops where Fraser Keir, one of our other teachers, has had the parents in for some hands-on experience using some of the technologies that we had in the other room to have a go and see what their children are really doing when they're in school. We also use digital platforms for communication. We have various Twitter or X streams that we are able to update. There is one specifically for STEM where you'll see some really fun videos that the children get up to, of what they get up to in school, And we also have our Maiden Hill Primary School and nursery Twitter where we just update on important things from our bulletin, but also achievements of children and just fun things they've been up to in the classes as well. We also have our blogs that if you'd like to have a look at, you can access through our school website. Every class has a blog to let their parents have a little look at what we get up to in class. I'm now going to pass on to Caius, who's going to tell you a little bit more about some of those technologies that we've had a look at this morning.
Hi, my name is Caius. In Primary 6, I was a digital leader. And today I'm going to tell you about the amazing technology we use in our school. Children of all ages learn how to code at Maiden Hill Primary School. Here you can see children from different classes using Chromebooks to program characters and make games. Last year, Primary 4 to 7 were lucky enough to have Morgan Stanley host a coding day, which was really fun. We also use microbits to code with. Microbits are small devices that we can program to do lots of different things. We have brought some along today so you can see them in action. Some classes also use Tinkercad to design 3D models. Last year in Primary 7, they used the software to design furniture which they presented to their classmates using Microsoft Sway. We're really lucky to have Lego Spike Kits too. They can be programmed to do lots of different things, including dance. We hope you can see some examples of these dancing robots this morning. Now I'm going to pass on to Mariam.
Hi, my name is Mariam. I was in the Girls in Engineering Club last year. We were really lucky to do lots of exciting things during our lunch times and use all the different technologies we have in our school. We had visits from guest speakers, including a software engineer. She told us all about her work and set us a challenge to complete in our groups. In the club, we used Make code to program electronic move motors. We started by making them go around in circles and then tried some different, more challenging shapes. Another fun thing we did was we had the chance to design our design and 3D print keychains and bookmarks. It was really cool. And oh yeah, another fun thing we did is code spheres. Yeah, we coded them to go around the maze, as you can see in this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the amazing resources technological resources we have at Maidenhead Primary School.
Thank you all so much for listening. And if you have any questions, we'd be more than willing to answer them, or if you want to send them over to us after, we'd be more than happy. But well done to our 2 Primary 7s, and thank you all very much.
Thank you. Apologies not for introducing you there,
That's okay.
Jem. Sorry. David, any members of the committee have any questions for just now, comments like to make regarding I think it was excellent to see the next door. We could actually see it up close and see everything that the children have been doing. Very interesting. Great to see the parents to come in as well. I recognise a few from Parent Council. I'm sure they are more than happy to see everything that the children are doing at the school. So appreciate it. Thanks very much. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. That was fantastic, especially to P7s. That was excellent work, well done. And to come into a forum, an environment like this, and present is not easy. So fantastic that you were able to do that. So congratulations on that. And indeed, the work that you do. And I think, as has been touched on, one of the key aspects is we know that children automatically just, they're gifted in the sense that they're growing up with the IT and with the changes to it and what we use, and I think that's important going forward. But the great thing, I like the idea of the parental involvement in the workshops to bring parents in to ensure that they can support their children at home, because that's again a key aspect of the learning, and so the more that we can do that, and I think that's a very good idea, and hopefully I would like to see obviously rolled out across all of our schools, because I think that's something that going forward we're going to need to do to make sure that that support is there throughout the learning path of our children and young people. So thanks very much for the presentation. That was excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Okay, excellent. And very pleased to say that we also have St Ninians with us today, who are also going to do a presentation. Mrs Jenkins here with Olivia, Maya and Myrid. Hopefully I got the names right. Mairead, sorry. If you want to speak to the committee, thanks.
Okay, good morning to you. My name is Sarah Jenkins. I am a computing teacher at St Ninians High School. We are very fortunate that we are running a lunchtime club called Dress Code. Dress Code is a charity organisation, and it is aimed at encouraging females into computing. So I'm going to hand you over to Maya, Mairead and Olivia. Maya will tell you a little bit about the coding club and what we do. Mairead will tell you a little bit about her role as mentor and what the sort of path that she has taken and the mentors take in the club. And Olivia will talk a little bit about the effect that this has had on both St Ninians and in terms of our senior pupils also. Okay, so this is how St Ninians High School is addressing the gender gap in computing science. Okay, so I'll pass you to Maya.
I'll just sit here. I'm Maya, and Dress Code is a lunchtime club that we host at the school, and we aim it primarily towards the younger year group, so S1 to 3, specifically females. We do this to try and encourage a pathway to computing and maybe like a further interest in after school, maybe jobs. Currently we have over 40 members, which is absolutely brilliant. When we started off with under 20 or so, people are coming back, they obviously really enjoy it, and they're telling their friends to come along, and they love it. We have, as 4th, 5th and 6th years, we have mentors to help these younger year groups to help them to just help them. If they're working on a task that they do at the club and they don't know how to do this, we can guide them, but we also help them through telling them what exams could entail, or telling them what picking computing is like. As juniors, they have the opportunity to explore any sort of programming language they want. We offer ones such as Python, Scratch, Construct2, MakeCode, Microbits, Piscal and HTML. And as a school, we offer support for any type of programming that they want. They love the Microbits because they get to program wee pictures and stuff. The juniors have also had the opportunity to get involved in competitions within dress code and out with dress code, and they really enjoy making these wee. For example, we had a Halloween competition recently. They had to make a Halloween themed game, and they submit it and they find out if they win, and they really enjoy doing that. They work as a group, teamwork. And then as mentors, we bring experience and programming skills with opportunities, which Mairead will be talking about.
Hi, I'm Mairead. I am a higher computing student at St Ninians. As a mentor, we get incredible experiences with the Dress Code charity. So we've been to the University of Glasgow doing hackathons, where we help primary students from all different primary schools in competitions and activities with places like the University of Glasgow, and we've done one with Morgan Stanley as well. Within these hackathons and different places we get to go, we're given presentations and talks on things like modern apprenticeships, which is an incredibly exciting thing to learn about. We've met people who are in these modern apprenticeships, and it's incredibly inspiring to get to go and see what they're up to. We've also been to Barclays, the new building just next to Clyde, and we got a tour through the new building. It was very, very cool. And through Ada Scott, which was the launch of that festival, which was really quite awesome to be at. So not only do the seniors get opportunities, but the juniors are also given opportunities to go to, for example, the primary schools to help with them and give them sort of a mentoring role as well, so that then when they get to sort of 4th, 5th and 6th year, they're not new to the whole mentoring business. And it's just really inspiring to be able to do all of these kinds of things. As a mentor, you get to sort of encourage the girls to be able to go into something like computing, and sort of give them your experiences in the computing department and what they're to expect in an environment where they are comfortable to learn about it. It's really cool. Olivia will talk about her side of things and the juniors.
Hi, I'm Olivia, and I'm going to speak a little bit about how what we do in dress code impacts the number of girls who then choose to do computing in the future as a subject at school, and also just more widely considering that field for their career. So firstly, we're noticing that in computing, the number of girls who choose it as a subject is increasing. I think a lot of this is down to the work that we do at Dress Code. Computing is stereotypically a very antisocial topic, but we show that it doesn't have to be. It's not about sitting and just alone figuring things out yourself. It's so much of it's communication, and when we see these girls helping each other and sharing expertise and figuring out solutions to issues they're having with their projects at the club, we see that we're encouraging them to then develop their skills in coding, and I think a lot of them would do really well if they did choose it as a field of work. There's some talented individuals there, and we're just seeing the numbers increasing. We're seeing like lots of different kind of creative aspects as well. Like a lot of people really enjoyed their Piscal avatars, where they got to kind of design themselves. And yeah, they're seeing that computing isn't just one part of a field, if that makes sense. There's like so many different aspects, and you don't need to have computing as a subject to consider it as a career. But they're seeing that there's lots of opportunities for them if they then do choose to pick that. So thank you for listening to us today.
Thank you to Olivia, Maya and Mairead. The success of, I would just like to say the success of the club is really down to the fabulous enthusiasm and expertise of the senior mentors. It wouldn't work just the same if it was myself. And I purely oversee it. As I say, the girls bring, and we have a big group of senior mentors, not all computing scientists, but we have a large group who are very enthusiastic and willing to get stuck in and give things a go. So thank you for your time this morning.
Okay, thanks very much. Excellent presentation. I don't know if any of the members have any questions or comments they'd like to make. Sorry.
Yes.
Evelyn. Yeah.
Hi. I don't know if that's working. I just want to comment that I've got grandchildren in various parts of the world, and I work with them on school projects. So, having worked in Calderwood Lodge and St Clair's, I can compare the standard of digital expertise between my grandchildren that live in various cities, and we seem to be streets ahead with the skills, the digital skills of our young people. And I honestly couldn't believe how much further ahead we were and how much more techy the East Renfrewshire kids are to my grandchildren in various cities in the world. So very, very well done, East Renfrewshire. Well done.
Thank you. Sorry, is there still a microphone? Oh.
I'm not techy.
No, you're okay. That's it. I think that's us. Councillor Buchanan.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks again for the presentation. That was excellent. I think what I really like about it, I wouldn't know where to begin with coding. That's the first thing. It's difficult enough switching the computer on and doing emails at times. So congratulations on the work that you're doing. But I think what is great about it is that peer mentoring aspect, and encouraging other children to come in. They're not seeing it, if you like, as a normal classroom setup and that here's an adult telling you what to do. It's much more here's what you can do, here's what we can learn, and that working together. So that peer mentoring aspect of it, I think, is excellent, and long may it continue, because obviously the skill sets required for the future are going to be significantly different, and this is obviously the starting point of that. So fantastic work, and long may it continue. Well done.
Excellent. Councillor Merrick.
Thanks, convener. Thanks very much, Sarah, Mia, Olivia, and the other person, Mairead. Sorry, Mairead. Terrific work you're doing, particularly to encourage women into the industry, as it were. And if you've doubled your numbers in a very short time, that's fantastic. Just need to do that another couple of times, and everybody in the world will be doing it. It surprises me a wee bit that more women aren't already involved and have never been involved in this, when the mother of computer programming was a woman. The very first computer programmer was Ada Lovelace, who is a computing language named after her, which is the least she deserves. But your work is terrific. Thank you very much, and keep rolling that forward. Cheers.
Thanks, Councillor Merrick. Any other comments or questions? Can I ask you about, you mentioned mentoring, I think, Councillor Buchanan, and also we talked earlier about, and you also talked about going out to the schools. Is it just within the cluster, or other schools?
We have gone out within the cluster for our second years. Actually, we're involved with the cluster primaries, or our feeder primaries, and encouraging both pupils and parents to come in and learn some skills. However, our senior pupils have been out at hackathons, and that has involved schools all over Glasgow. Usually schools which are maybe in a more deprived area, and our hackathon ladies have gone out and supported groups of schools to do that. So we have been out, and we have been sort of exemplifying our role model status, and using our skills to demonstrate that.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry, the microphone. Also very interesting here, I think saw the name Morgan Stanley mentioned in both presentations. Is that valuable, very valuable to the schools? And do you yourselves, the coders, actually get quite a bit of benefit from that, a bit learning from them? Have you?
Definitely. To see that it's not just like a fairy tale, that you've got an example of somebody who's managed to go through school and go through this apprenticeship and be very happy in what they're doing, makes it seem so much more realistic and very, very helpful, especially when they get to talk to us about what they do in their day-to-day life. So we had a very, very informative lady who talked about her 9 to 5 and sort of how she incorporated uni work with that, and it was really, really helpful to sort of visualise what it would be like.
So you mentioned, so is that someone's doing an apprenticeship, a modern apprenticeship?
Yeah, a modern apprenticeship.
Excellent, great. Okay, and also highly relevant, and the interesting you mentioned cybersecurity as well. The hackathon is very relevant as well. Do we have any other comments or questions? Councillor O'Donnell?
Great presentation. My daughter was also at St Ninians. She's now doing computing science at Strathclyde. Mrs Jenkins probably knows her, but I don't remember hearing about this club when she was at St Ninians. So presumably it's relatively new, and and it's a big presumption she would actually tell me what club she was in anyway. But one thought, as you're talking about mentoring and the likes, obviously girls are getting into university. They are, doing computing science increasingly. So if there's a mentoring from university back, ex-pupils to come in and encourage the kids that there is a valid career path and that there's no fear to be going into computing science, that might be something that you want to consider.
We do. We would be delighted to have your daughter to come in and speak to us. We're sort of started work on, obviously with lockdown we were a wee bit behind on where we should be, but we have started to reach out to former pupils. In fact, the day at Barclays, our team leaders were 3 St Ninians pupils. I don't think that was by accident, but they gave us an insight as to what their day-to-day was. We were interested to know, do they work from home? Do they work in the office? And what was their day-to-day like? And the girls got the opportunity to see that. We are getting increasingly more pupils who are willing to work with the school. So we have we've actually got a female from Barclays who's coming in to help at the Dress Code Club. Believe it or not, she's one of the girls' aunties. And we've had notification from some of our male pupils also who would like to come in and talk about particularly the graduate apprenticeships, to tell us what's involved with that and how to apply and how to get the best out of the applications and the process in which to do that. So we are building on that, and that is obviously very important to us, because it's one thing a teacher standing in a class and telling people that this is how it is, but it's more real. There's a realistic aspect when you have somebody that's actually doing the job and they're so enthusiastic and they're really enjoying it.
And just to be clear, I'm in no position to volunteer my daughter to do anything.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Donnell. And I think unless there's any other comments or questions, I'd like to thank you both very much for coming along. Obviously highly relevant to what we're about to discuss, the digital learning strategy for the next 3 years. But it's great to see that we have so much really good work that's going on already, and some very bright, intelligent young people who are doing that work. So thank you very much. I'll let you get back to school now and get on with your coding. Thank you. Excellent. That was nice, wasn't it? It was really great to see. So folks will carry on with the agenda, and the main item, obviously, the digital learning and the teaching strategy 2024-27. And I believe it's Graham that's going to present this from the education team.
Yes, so thank you very much, convener. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be quite as interesting or as exciting as what we've just had, but I'll certainly try my best. So I'm pleased, obviously, to be able to have the opportunity to update Education Committee on the work that's been undertaken. Obviously, some of that we've just seen in terms of embracing and promoting digital learning and teaching across our schools and nurseries, and then to furthermore set out our future plans to continue to build on this in the years ahead. Just by way of background, members will note that the Council's initial digital learning and teaching strategy was approved in October 2018 by Education Committee, and that was reflecting both the Scottish Government's national digital learning strategy at that time, and of course the wider work being taken across the Council in terms of wider approaches to digital transformation and the Council's wider aspirations around that. Obviously, I'm sure I don't have to remind members that the onset of the pandemic in March 2020 radically changed education, and this was particularly true when it came to digital learning and teaching, given the periods of school closure and the widespread adoption of remote learning and what that meant for our pupils. Various reports have been considered, both by Education Committee and Council as a whole over recent years, which have specifically referenced some of the kind of work that was undertaken in this area, so I don't want to kind of replicate that too much, but it kind of noted that the big efforts that were put in place by our schools, our staff, to really kind of promote that and make sure there was a continuity throughout those periods. Whilst it was undoubtedly challenging, there is no denying that the pandemic radically accelerated our approach to digital. It resulted in many aspects of the strategy being quickly overtaken, as we had to adopt new approaches very quickly and look at new innovative practice, both within classrooms and playrooms, but also at home too, and how that all kind of started to link together. In advance of the development of our new refresh strategy, an evaluation of that original 2018 strategy was undertaken throughout the 22-23 session, and that was through consultation and engagement with our staff and our learners, and this is attached for members as Appendix 1. I do appreciate this is a very lengthy document. There's quite a lot of reading in it, but I think as we've just seen from the presentations we've had, it looks to demonstrate both the scale and the breadth of activities that have been undertaken in that preceding period. Just to highlight just a couple of kind of key highlights of some of the themes which emerged, we saw a significant increase in the professional learning opportunities available to staff, and that was obviously particularly during the pandemic as staff were having to adopt very quickly and think about how they could ensure that continuity. We've seen continued investment in digital resources, so I mean that both in terms of computers and laptops that you would expect, but also in looking at more innovative learning tools and different technologies. Again, we saw an example or some examples of that in the room beforehand, and also we've got our DigiHub sort of digital learning space at St John's Primary, which is a sort of learning space which has been available for all schools to take advantage of. In addition, I would note that there has been a focus on supporting pupils from lower income families, so we have looked at the provision of laptops and devices to support that, but also it's not just about a device, it's about that connectivity, it's about that wider support as well, and that has been part of our kind of approach there, is ensuring that pupils are able to access the device when at home and not just have the device on its own. We've also looked at the expansion and the use of digital technologies across the entire curriculum, and that has been specifically recognised through external review and inspection. And finally, there has been an ongoing wider transformation of services, as I mentioned at the start. So that's included things like the rollout of Parents Portal, Parent Pay and online parents' evenings, and all of these have had the aim of expanding that digital approach, not just within the classroom, but in a wider approach to school. So how do we improve that relationship with parents and things as well, through looking at the digital resources available to us. These achievements, in addition to the significant other areas outlined in the evaluation report, have informed the development of our new refresh strategy, and I'm pleased to obviously have the opportunity to present this to committee here today. If I can firstly just draw members' attention to the Department's digital vision, and that's set out on the second page of the new strategy. It sets out the focus and aims of the strategy itself and recognises the importance of ensuring that children and young people have the skills and knowledge to importantly, safely, I think, is one of the key parts we've looked at, engage with the digital world. That's obviously both within their learning and then as they go on beyond their learning into the world, life learning and work. I think it is important that we recognise there is no one-size-fits-all approach to digital technologies within our schools and in our establishments. Learners and staff are all at very different levels of that. They're all at different stages on their own digital journeys. And I think, therefore, we're recognising that we have to take that kind of, looking at schools on an individual basis in terms of the approaches they're taking forward. And therefore, we've built it around 3 kind of key themes in terms of how we're taking that forward. So that's digital access, digital learning and teaching, and finally, digital leadership. And each of these always have associated key activities under each theme, both for the department, in terms of what we'll be looking to take forward with our partners within the council, but also for individual establishments in terms of what we are promoting and encouraging them to be taking forward over the coming years. And collectively, these activities seek to build on the progress we have thus far made, and look at how we further embed these digital approaches appropriately within our learning and teaching. I have just noted, and apologies for this, that there has been a slight formatting issue, I think on one of the pages within the report under the digital access page, which people may have noticed. It's just at the bottom of the page. For clarity, I can advise that this actually should state, and I can provide this just obviously for the minute, promote and facilitate inclusion and accessibility for all learners and their families, particularly those who are at risk of educational disadvantage and those who have additional learning needs. And apologies that, as I said, that's a slight formatting issue, that has been cut off, but we will ensure that's corrected within the final version. So finally, I would just like to also stress that this strategy can't be viewed in isolation, and it's important to consider the linkages across both the wider work of the department in terms of the various strategies and plans we have in place, but also that kind of a partnership approach across the council as a whole. The impacts of these activities will help support a number of strategies and plans, but we also need to look at how we work with the council's IT service as a perhaps the most obvious example in terms of how we deliver on these ambitions and take forward our ambition for education. So in conclusion, Convener, the Education Department is committed to ensuring that digital continues to be a key consideration across all aspects of learning and teaching. This new strategy, building on the evaluation of the initial strategy and the work been undertaken thus far, sets out our ambition for what comes next as we aim to ensure that our ambitions for young people can be met. So, Convener, the Education Committee is asked to note the evaluation undertaken, approve the new draft strategy, and request that the Director report back to the Education Committee on the impact of the implementation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Graham. And I'll put it out then to the committee if they've got any questions and comments with regards to the evaluation and the strategy. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much, Graham, for the paper and for pulling it all together. Very much welcome the strategy. I think it's something that we can't hide from. The future is clearly going to be digital. The onset of artificial intelligence and all its guises, not just the positive aspects, but there are negative aspects clearly as well within that. And I think within this learning strategy, where hopefully children are learning, that the use of the systems are about using the systems, not replacing people, not taking away from other areas. It's about creating an environment where the skills that they have will be useful in going forward. And I think that difference, clearly we are in an environment which is changing almost daily. And this strategy gives us a strategy which is controlled, which is looked and regulated in what the information that is going out and what our children and young people are learning. And I think that's vital going forward, because one of the main risks, particularly with AI, is that the regulation and governance of it tends to lag significantly behind the movement of the artificial intelligence itself. And so there is that vacuum, if you like. But this gives us a strategy and a target, which will obviously evolve. It's not saying this is it, because it'll change again tomorrow, but it gives us something to work towards, and I think that's fantastic, and gives our children the opportunity to be in the right place going forward, and I think that's what's key. And obviously the inclusive aspect of it as well, making sure that all of our children have that opportunity, which is vital going forward. So yeah,
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Any other questions, comments on strategy? Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks for this report. I've got a number of challenges with this report and concerns. I've raised them with Mark and with Graham and Janice, and that was very helpful. I think where my concern was that this is actually a digital enabling strategy. and lacking on the connectivity with our other educational outcomes and the likes. So that's the bit I'm struggling with a bit, which is really the why. Why are we doing this? I think we all know what it is, but what is the expected impact on outcomes for our children and actually for our teachers as well, in terms, is this going to improve efficiency of teaching, consistency of teaching throughout our schools, and perhaps even less time for some of our teachers in terms of marking assignments, homework, and lower learning interventions. So I think the outcomes for me were missing on this. In particular, didn't see any direct reference or little reference to social exclusion of devices. What are we doing about that? And nothing really about impact on the poverty-related attainment gap. Now, these are outcomes that we look at elsewhere, but as a standalone document, that felt missing to me in terms of what we're saying. And I know you are thinking about all of those things, but I think it would be helpful to see the why, how this impacts on our outcomes, so we're completely comfortable with our investment, and we're doing it all for the right reasons, but that connection is missing a little bit on the paper, and I did have good discussion with Janice and Graham on that, and I appreciate your time on that previously.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know obviously Councillor O'Donnell would have had that discussion, and I certainly think we'd be happy to look at how we make that more explicit. I think we said it might be a kind of follow-up would come and kind of look at how we make some of those linkages a bit more explicit in terms of how it's supporting all the other strategies and kind of linking that together. So, no, we're happy to look at that and bring that to next committee.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Sorry. Yep, Des.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it was just briefly to respond to what Councillor O'Donnell was saying there. Obviously, the development of technology and its embedding in teaching and learning does clearly have impacts and consequences for pupils in a very positive way, but also for teachers as well. And there's certain things that haven't changed much in education, and meanwhile this is racing on ahead. So there are going to be that's going to have to be addressed and looked at, and I'm cognisant of that, and I'm sure all the teacher unions are across the board. I mean, I think also in terms of in looking at this, and having read the Hayward review as well, in terms of the implementation of partial implementation, full implementation, non-implementation, whatever happens in relation to that, that makes clear that there are huge resourcing issues there as well, and going forward in the use of technology as well. And the Hayward review is absolutely explicit in addressing issues of teachers' workload, where that might be reduced, where that might be increased. Because if you're not doing one thing, then there are issues there. I mean, they'll be resolvable. They will be resolvable. Hayward makes mention of AI. It makes reference to two different approaches to take in relation to AI: embrace it, exclude it. There's no consensus reached on that. But yeah, I mean, this is something that clearly will have continue to have a huge impact, Councillor, in respect of this, and not just in East Renfrewshire, but I'm sure nationally, the teachers' unions will be wanting to engage in that in as constructive a way as possible.
Thank you, Des. I think Councillor O'Donnell, Janice, were you going to come in first?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I mean, we have put an activity about looking at that assessment, particularly in the senior phase, if the Hayward review is implemented fully, and we still await information about that. But what I do want to draw the attention is that if the cover paper of this report, that there is no finance linked to this, and all of the activities in this strategy at the moment is within our devolved budget. And obviously we'll try and resource the strategy as best we can, but I do think that moving ahead, if there is a national expectation, then that would be something else that we would need to discuss with a committee at a future date.
Okay, thanks, Janice. Councillor O'Donnell.
Just to come into Ted's comment, yeah. And when I mentioned earlier about outcomes, I think one of the outcomes I think we'd like to track over time, or should be tracking, is not just pupil outcomes and well-being, but also teacher outcomes and well-being. You know, the last thing we want to do is overload teachers with more work, more things to do. And where's the opportunity here? Is this a means of helping teachers to become more effective in delivering outcomes for our pupils? So I think that's an important aspect if we look at the outcomes when we're reporting on that.
Councillor Buchanan. Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, just to touch on some of those issues, obviously there was an announcement the other day. Education reform is something that's been going on for the last while, and there's a further short consultation going to be launched to look at where it goes in the future, but equally that ties in with what happens with the SQA, with the qualifications at the end of it, which is also in the mix. And again, the other aspect to that, as Des has touched on, is in teacher quality and the support that teachers have in ensuring that whatever is there in the future in terms of education, that teachers are fully involved in that and given the appropriate support and training to ensure that that can continue. So I know that this is, I see this almost as a kind of a starting point to put us in a position where the likely direction of travel is this, and ensuring that not just our teaching staff but our pupils have the skill set for that going forward, because I think the reform is going to be a huge agenda. Hayward highlights the necessary drive in that change, and hopefully we'll be in a position which stands us in good stead going forward with everything that we know is likely to happen over the next few months and years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Anything else you want to? I did notice, obviously, in the evaluation it talked about the digital leaders in the 4 years and the training of the teachers to become those due to turnover, etc. But then, obviously, there was issues there. But then the DigiChamps is the part of the new strategy going forward to hopefully to expand opportunities for all staff to develop skills in digital pedagogy, if I pronounced that right, and ensure digital technology is embedded in daily practice. As part of the recommendations, there is the request for the Director of Education to come back and talk to us about the impact. And obviously there's been various things that Councillor O'Donnell and others have highlighted. Mark, can you, in terms of being able to do so, would you be able to do that and address the issues that have been talked?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, very, very happy to do that. And I think the committee will be aware that that's part of our approach. We're constantly looking both at that continuous improvement, but also looking to demonstrate that impact. You know, I mean, I think maybe there's a piece of work for us to do there in terms of convincing Councillor O'Donnell that focus there, that impact. I mean, I would say that's built into the vision, and then those three kind of key areas. But I think there's maybe a piece of work for us to do to communicate that, and we can do that in a number of ways. Things like our standards and quality report. We've recently had Barhead inspected. We'll have more inspections over this year. We do our own reviews. So actually, as part of that, we will be capturing on an ongoing basis the impact of digital learning in terms of that quality of learning and teaching. I would say that we probably need to be careful in terms of making that direct comparison in terms of raising attainment, because actually I think this digital is and you probably saw it exemplified very well by both groups of presentations, this supports that quality of learning and teaching, which in itself then supports that improved attainment. I would be reluctant, just with my sort of university background in that way, to say that we could do a direct link to say, you know, from an increase in devices or use of devices that will directly impact our stretch aims. They are part of that overall sort of process that we bring about that improvement. So very happy, Convener, to bring back other reports at different points, whether that's specifically on this one, we can do that, but also making sure that that lens that members are asking us to look at, we bring that back and illustrate that in different ways. And I recall an earlier committee, Councillor O'Donnell, where you spoke about the gender gap. And I think hopefully this morning again, we've got another illustration of ways in which our schools are trying to tackle that. So I think I would say we try and do that in a holistic way, but also we'll do specific things if that is helpful. Convener.
Thanks very much, Mark. That's acceptable. Can I also possibly include, obviously one of the key parts of the vision and the strategy included the connectivity and the infrastructure, and obviously it enables all of these technologies and the teachers to teach and the children to learn. I've asked business operations for an update actually on the connectivity for the schools, because if they don't have the internet access to high speed, then it could, not facilitate as much as we want to do. So, and we possibly include that as part of the update that comes back to committee to ensure, because all the children could have the devices and everything, and the teaching's happening, but then network issues mean that they can't, finish their learning, which would be an issue. Okay, Mark?
Obviously we link very closely with business operations. That should also come through the sort of transformation programme and the regular reports that Louise brings to Cabinet, and then ultimately onto Council in that way through the impact of those different change programmes.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? No. In that case then, we're asked to note the evaluation undertaken on the department's digital learning and teaching strategy, approve the new draft digital learning and teaching strategy for 24-27, and request the director to report to the Education Committee in future on the impact of its implementation. Is committee happy to do so? Okay. Thank you. Sorry, that concludes, I think, the meeting for today. No, sorry. Oh no, terribly sorry. It's not a formal paper, it's actually the SQA update. Terribly sorry. And I believe it's yourself, Janice?
Yes, it is. I've just...
And yeah, I think we'll hopefully all be pleased to see this. Thanks.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Committee, for giving us the opportunity to come along and present, as we do each year, on the performance of our primary and secondary schools. This year we are going to, as always, have that focus on the broad general education and the senior phase. We're also going to touch a wee bit on school leavers and attendance. We'll drill down into reading, writing, talking and listening, numeracy and mathematics from 3 to 15, which is assessed using teacher judgments, and we'll also comment on the recent SQA examination performance. As always, we'll look at equity and how we are raising the bar for all our young people, despite whichever challenges and barriers they may have to their learning. And we'll reference the stretch aims that we spoke about in detail at last committee. And finally, we will illustrate some of the interventions in the form of 2 case studies that our schools are doing to actually achieve these quite remarkable performance standards on a year-to-year basis. And it's down to the hard work of the young people, the staff, and indeed their families that we can sit here and share that. So, going to start looking at the broad general education. You'll be aware that that is the 3 to 15. It's the curriculum that our nursery, our primary, and our children right up to the senior phase when they sit more formal exam study. And you'll recall that we demonstrate this using a scorecard that's been shared in previous years. And this scorecard will summarise our performance in terms of the broad general education. And if I could just highlight in the slide there, it is reading, and our performance was 91%. And in the column next to it, that is the target we've set for a 4-year target for the department. You'll know that that's an aggregate target, because obviously this is based in different cohorts, but for year 1, that particular cohort of P1, 4 and 7 achieved it. And the figure below that is the national performance for P1, 4 and 7 in reading. So yet again, that 2% increase has allowed us to sit here as the highest performing local authority again for this measure for P1, 4 and 7. And similar with writing. Again, 90%, a 3% increase. quite a considerable way away from the national target. So once again, our young people and our staff and our parents are working extremely hard to reach these standards. If we move on to talking and listening is always an exceptionally high standard. We're sitting there at 94%, which is really impressive, but you'll see the gap between the national and East End's not as large as in other areas, but it's still large. And again, that very ambitious target of 3 years, we've managed to achieve it for this cohort, but that sort of caution of that aggregation, that different cohorts might not perform to the same standard, but we would hope over that average period that we would be able to report success in this area. And finally, numeracy and mathematics. We did not make that aggregate target, but remember it's for 2026, but we weren't that far off it. And elected members will recall the numeracy and mathematics strategy that was approved in June, and that will hopefully, or it will, I should be a wee bit more assertive and confident, that will make the difference for our young people. So really, a wee bit more detail to what's on these scorecards. These are the expected levels that the P1, 4 and 7 we measure, and last year we had 4,105 pupils, and you can see all our pupils, there was that 2% increase. For our young people in free school meals, we had that 3% increase, and it was no change from the previous year for young people living in SIMD 1 and 2 or quintile 1. And you'll be aware that young people, according to their community they live in, it's measured in areas of deprivation as using the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. It can either be in 10 parts or 5 parts. So just to let you know that 1 and 2 is the same as quintile 1. Again, as the highest performing local authority, but you see that equity gap that although it's really pleasing that some young people made an increase, we still want to continue to focus our efforts on those who need us most. And if we layer in the gender information, there's still that gender gap, but that has decreased by 1.1% from previous years. Very similar to numeracy.
Sorry, I'm really struggling to see this. If I don't know if other committee members, is it possible to send it to us so we can see it on screen? I'm really struggling with it.
PDF it and send it.
I think my net goes.
You can access it to
Watch swap seats.
There's not a Teams link on the calendar.
Watch swap seats. Watch swap seats. Is that back?
I don't know. Is it just me that's having the problem, or?
Well, this one's closer. I can use it.
I'll swap your seats if you want.
Okay, let's do it. Sorry about that, Janice. You were mid-flow, but and just on that point, scrutiny. Why are we not distributing this in advance as part of the papers so that we can actually have read it beforehand?
So the CFE data has all been shared. It was discussed in quite a lot of detail at the last committee meeting. The SQA data, a lot of that is not something we can share beyond this room because of the sort of, it includes some of the virtual comparators, so some of the information that we take from Insight, which Janice will mention. We're allowed to do in that professional way to share in terms of, but we're not allowed to, we're not meant to put it out in a broader sense in terms of some of the data. So it would need to be on a sort of confidential basis.
Is this meeting recorded?
Yeah, sorry. This part of the meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Well, we can arrange for copies of you to have beyond that. Happy to do that, Leader.
The only bit that's really different from the information that you've been shared before, because obviously I'd given a verbal update, and as we say last meeting, is that virtual comparison, which isn't available until end of September, beginning of October as well. So there is a timing issue for that too. But we could amend and see what we can share. And I'll be conscious then with my presentation that I'll focus on East Drain, although we will talk about anonymous virtual comparators or the national comparator rather than anything of any specific detail. But happy to.
In regards to Owen's comment, we don't have an exam paper.
I think historically it's always been a presentation rather
Right.
than a paper, and I just think that's just been historical.
Is that a possibility?
But if committee want to change the approach, I'm sure it can be considered.
You can, if you wish, move to go into the exempt session. If you wish to, if you think it would widen the debate and you want to cover all the issues that you've covered, we would normally give prior notice of that thing, but we would have an item on the agenda. But the committee can at any time take a motion to move into exempt session should it wish. But we will minute the reasons for that if you do determine to do so.
Does that then mean that the recording then's not available, or?
Yeah, it's okay.
It would mean the recording effectively would stop, and you would
That's fine,
discuss
I'll
the what you wish to discuss, and the minute would be very light on that item in terms of a public record.
Okay, thanks, Colin. But I believe Janice thinks she's confident that she can continue without. Committee's happy with that.
Sorry. We need to be careful because there's lay members in here as well. So I think we'll just leave it. Maybe in a future education meeting we can have that paper or distribute it amongst the elected members.
I could certainly post this meeting, PDF it and take out any information that may be sensitive, but happy to have any conversation out with this meeting about any performance information or questions. I'm happy to carry on just now, conveners.
Yep, I think that's fine, Janice, yeah.
Okay. So I'll try, having explained the literacy, I'll layer in the numeracy, and if you look at the similar code, there has been increases for every pupil, and indeed those living in quintile 1 or SIMD 1 and 2, and those receiving free school meals. Again, the gender gap has decreased to 1.7, where it was 4.4% last year. So positive signs in terms of numeracy, which is echoed later on when we look at the older cohort of pupils. And really, just as a sort of recall, you will know that the stretch aims that we discussed in detail, so I'll not spend a lot of time here, but you'll know there's a stretch aim for that combined literacy, so that's looking at reading, writing, talking and listening together. That there was the stretch aim of 87%, which we achieved. Down below, that's our new stretch aim, which is for a longer period of time. And you'll see that we didn't achieve that for quintile 1, but we did for quintile 5. But you'll recall that there was increases for young people in quintile 1, just not at a rate that we would have desired. Now, sorry, that has just jumped. There we go. And again, children living in quintile 5 met their numeracy. Those in 1 did not meet that stretch aim. And again, we met the overall, and there's the more ambitious stretch aim for the next 3-year period. And I must stress that when you're starting to operate at these levels, it's very, and we talked about that in some time, our stretch aims have continued to be very ambitious, but we would rather have that approach of aiming high, and research tells you that the higher you aim, even if you don't reach that target, you are in a position where you've made more progress, and that's proven by research over a long period of time. And just really, these charts are aligned to the scorecard I showed, and that just gave the actual figures, so you can see what the young people achieved. Again, these were shared last time, so I'm moving on. But if we look to S3, young people who are in the 4th level of the broad general education, which is the final level before they move to senior phase, you will see that in reading, it was status quo for all pupils. Those children with free school meals, slight dip in performance, but those living in areas of deprivation, a slight increase. And that just really highlights that the those receiving free school meals and those living in areas of deprivation are not necessarily the same young people. So in East Renfrewshire, over a long period of time, and with the support of Education Committee and Council, have looked at key equity groups, because there's people with barriers, whether that's support needs, whether that's language, there's different barriers, for, and we target our resource on those who need, and use our intelligence and our data to make sure it's the right people. But despite us staying at a status quo, East Ren continues to be the highest performing local authority, not only for all pupils, but also for those pupils living in lower deciles areas for reading. So although we are not necessarily content with that performance, and indeed that gap, nationally we are, if you live in an area of deprivation in East Ren, you perform higher than an area of deprivation elsewhere. And if we move on, we'll see the gender gap there. So the gender gap is, again, has reduced from just slightly from 5% to 4% this year, but obviously in the right direction, but not necessarily as fast as we would like. And if I give you a second just to look at writing, and you'll see the green box indicates improvement. And again, we have that gender gap, which was 7.3% last year. So low, we've still got a 3.6. We can see that we've halved that gender gap for this particular cohort in writing. And I think part of this, it's really important that we bring this information, but the quality improvement team sitting behind this information is drilling down even further with our schools to work out what actually happened to make a difference. Is this something that we can extend beyond one school, one class, one cohort?
Councillor O'Donnell.
Can I just confirm that that's the right way around for boys and girls?
Yes, the boys actually performed better.
In writing?
Yes.
Is that historical thing? That's
No.
quite surprising.
And it's surprising because there's difference with reading as well, because normally you would think reading and writing.
Wow, okay. Thanks for clarifying.
And the gap has the gap is because of that increase in boys' attainment. But again, we would drill down, is that a particular cohort of pupils, or is it a strategy, is it an approach in a school? And we would look, and I think that's the sort of, this is just looking at who was in S3 last year. But whatever happened worked for those boys. And again, in S3, our boys were slightly lower than our girls, but again the gap decreased. So something positive in writing, but not in other areas. And we can see it's a more positive picture for those living in free school meals, but again, those living in areas of deprivation. So, and there we go with numeracy of the boys. Now, historically, our boys do tend to get stronger as they go through the school, but we can see that there. Sorry, there's just a slight delay in the clicker. We're going to move on and look at that improvement, in particular in the senior phase, and in particular look at the NIF priority, which is about literacy and numeracy. And to be able to do that, it's really important that we understand the demographic of that particular cohort. So this was our S4 pupils from last year, and I appreciate that the numbers may be slightly smaller for some people than others. But you can see right away that summarising those characteristics with the previous year, that around 7% of our cohort were registered for free school meals, just slightly more than half were boys. 86% of the cohort were, which was up from 80 the previous year. Around 23% of the cohort were identified as an ethnic minority, where the largest was Asian Pakistani. And you can know those strong links between attainment and deprivation, and that is one of those key index we look at, and this slide shows that profile, and it shows that the number of young people who were living in quintile 1 and from last year and this year it's slightly down, which you would imagine then that's why it's slightly up in quintile 5 or other. And there is a wee bit of caution with some of the new house building in Barrhead, where some of the young people don't yet have a quintile, and we have moved from areas that were measured as quintile 1 and now live in areas that may be of a higher quintile or decile, depending what measure you're considering. But I think one of the things that we do look at is that relationship between presentations and awards. Our young people in our schools and families are very ambitious, and some of our young people set multiple awards. And you can see each year that our schools have increased presentations. And for this particular cohort, some schools, it was really considerable presentations. But you could put anyone forward for an exam, but you can see it's the pass rate that really makes the difference, and it's about making sure our right people are on the right courses at the right time, so that ongoing assessment through the broad general education and the senior phase, so that when young people are presented for an award, it's the correct course for them. But if you look at East Renfrewshire in 2019, which was the last exam year, compared to our more traditional exam year compared to last year, an increase in presentation. But really impressive is the increase for some of our schools in pass rates. And I mean, if you look at Williamwood, then 96% of young people were presented at a National 5 award, and 93% got an A2C award. So that tells a very strong picture in terms of learning and teaching and assessment in that school. Similar to St Luke's, where their presentation has jumped up considerably, but it's not affected the pass rate. And again, there's caution with that. You look at that over time, because it is about getting it right for that particular cohort. But it is wow when you look at those pass rates for our schools. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the attainment gap, looking at St Luke's and Barrhead's High, is it closing against the other schools in the authority?
Well, if we go on, it'd be like measuring apples with pears in a lots of ways. But when you go on and look at them against the national standard and indeed their virtual comparator, which I'll explain a wee bit detail, but that's taking a look at schools that have got the same number of children with additional support needs, the same number of children who live in particular deciles. They are confidently outperforming their virtual comparators in almost all aspects in almost every year. So, and I think that's a very good point, because sometimes when you look at it like this, it's a temptation to compare the East to the West. But if you're comparing it to themselves and to schools that are similar, the young people who go to St Luke's and Barrhead get an excellent experience.
I understand that. Mm-hmm. I think the point I'm making, you're talking about, the virtual comparator against other authorities. I mean, we're the one authority. I mean, when you look at the pass marks for Barrhead and St Luke's against, say, Williamwood or Mearns Castle, it's a massive difference there.
And if I tell you the national pass rate was 79,
right,
and if you drill into St Luke's and Barrhead, look where they are above the national.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just looking at the authority.
No, absolutely. And they're all our schools, so I'm highlighting the strong performance in all our schools. But this would actually, that shows you a wee bit more. This layers in this slide about all our schools. Again, the most affluent on the left, right down to the right-hand side, where young people have maybe greater poverty-related challenges. But if you layer in the virtual comparator, which, you can see there for an S4 for children who get 5 or more National 5 passes, you can see that St Luke's were sitting at 63 and their virtual comparator at 44. Okay. And I would also pick out Williamwood in this slide. for 88% of young people to get 5 or more compared to its virtual comparator. And I think it's very easy to look at schools on the left-hand side and think they're not without challenges. But and St Ninians closely followed with 87, but that's phenomenal. That's really outstanding when the national figure is 43%. So I would hope we would see that figure again, but it's certainly the best ever. And again, if you look at, I think it's the consistency across all measures. Again, if you look at S5, and the columns go to 2019 to 2023, we'll layer in the virtual comparators, and the green tick indicates when they have outperformed their virtual comparator. And I think that's the thing when that we should be really, and I'm proud of all our schools, but some of them with the particular challenges, it's really impressive what they're achieving on a regular basis. That's not to say sometimes there may be a particular cohort, a particular challenge, but that's why we look at this attainment. We bring it to you on a yearly basis, but we look at it over a period of time. And as I say, we drill down. And there we go for level 7, which is like advanced higher. And you can see again. Almost all have outperformed their virtual comparator. But again, it's back to that quality of awards. Sometimes it's about more than the passing. It's about the phenomenal number of A's that our young people get. And we know from applications to higher education and for even graduate apprentice, the ask of our young people is increasingly more, and it's really demanding. And in some circumstances, it's not necessarily about passing these exams, it's about getting the higher quality grades. So this line graph shows the increase in proportion of S4 pupils achieving 8 or more awards at National 5, and this has increased from 26.5% back in 2000 when we started capturing this, to then on the slide it shows you 33%, and look where we are in 2023. And you can see clearly there that 20% of S4 pupils in 2023 achieved 8 or more awards, up from 22% the previous year. And then that layers in the actual quality of the awards. And I appreciate that you might want to see this slide and the others to actually, there are a lot of information on that. But if we can see that our young people are achieving 5 A's at higher in all our schools, but what's really we should highlight as well, and I'm sure Des will at the end, is that they're being supported at home and schools to achieve this. And they are, this is really important when they're selecting their pathways. But we want to look at those key equity groups and how we are supporting the needs of those who need our support most. A point system is used called tariff points basically, and this point system is used to measure achievement when going into further or higher education, and we call it tariffs. And points are aggregated from different qualifications, and there's no ceiling on the number of points that young people get. And you can see, so for example, a pupil A has 5 subjects in S5 and 4 at B grades, so that's 182 points times 4, plus the 84 points for the one that got an A, and you can see their total points. So when we look at our tariff points, and this slide examines attainment for S4 pupils from 3 different groups based on the most deprived, the middle and the least deprived, we can see there was a 1% increase in terms of tariff points for those young people over that period of time, but you can see it's dipped this year an 8% increase for the middle cohort and a 4% increase. So although there has been that increase over 5 years, and it's still higher than where we were the last exam year of 2019, it is slightly dipped down when we went back to a more traditional exam. And that's part of the national debate around how we measure attainment in the senior phase, and some of this information and data is used to support consultations and seeking views on is the assessment we've got right for all children. And again, this is a bubble graph that I know that we shared with you last year, and those who've been on committee a wee bit longer will recall this. And this is this bubble shows the proportion of pupils in the relevant decile. So the first bubble would be decile 1 on the left-hand side, and the top one would be decile 10. And the red is the national, and the green is East Wren. The size of the bubble indicates the number of pupils. So you can see that East Renfrewshire has very small number of pupils in decile 1 compared to nationally, and we've got a lot in decile 10. But I think the important thing is that you can see no matter your postcode in East Renfrewshire, as a cohort in S6 last year, we outperformed. So where the qualifications our young people had leaving school outperformed everywhere nationally. And that's something that you'll see later on that our schools use that slide. But we really like to focus on the results young people get throughout school, but also the results they get when leaving school. And there is that national commitment as well as a commitment in East Wren that there is a basic level of literacy and numeracy for all school leavers, and that's part of the National Improvement Framework. It's also a consistent message in our Curriculum for Excellence, and you'll know that we've referenced it in both our maths strategy and our previous literacy strategy. So this chart examines East Renfrewshire leavers in terms of literacy and numeracy, both at level 4, which is not measured with an exam, level 5 and level 6, which it is. And you can see over the last 5 years, the level of literacy has more or less stayed the same or slightly increased. Clearly this continues to be a focus, and that's why we continue to invest a lot of our energy, our support, our professional learning, and ensuring that at a bare minimum all our staff, no matter what subject they teach, are able to support young people's literacy and numeracy attainment. And there we can see the national average. And I think closing the gap in terms of, and this is something that we brought to committee as part of the stretch aims, but we measure these in different ways. We measure it using the annual participation measure, but we also measure this and it's nationally measured, and the results are published. They shouldn't be a surprise to us because our schools, along with our partners in Skills Development Scotland, work extremely hard to make sure our young people, when they're leaving school, have a positive destination and a sustained destination. And you'll see in terms of equity that since 2018, over that period of time, that considerable increase in our young people who live in quintile 1, which is our areas of most need in terms of poverty. And I like this slide because it shows that everyone's increased, but it's really showing that the rate of increase for those young people. And if you look at, I suppose, similar to your question before, Councillor Devlin, that you look at 99% of our young people living in our most deprived areas left school and went on to a positive destination. And we will bring that figure back. There's a sort of lag with that because they do measure it sometime after school, and sometimes that's the frustration that, and that's where we have to give credit to staff. They do continue once children leave school. They're still our pupils until we know that they've got a positive destination. And again, if we look at that in terms of the annual participation measure, which has been introduced as a stretch aim, as I said. This one's more of a partnership with Work Estrain and colleges and universities, but this measures 16 to 19, so kids are away from school a considerably longer period of time. But it's that, and what we really like about this measure is you can go in and take a snapshot at any time or in any day, and to look at our quintile 1 increase. So we have a 2.2%, not a 3.3% gap between our most affluent young people and those living in quintile 1 in terms of participating in learning, education, employment, training, but in a positive destination for some 2 years after they've left school, for some a year. And again, highest performing local authority in terms of that. And that's something we're really proud of, because it is that partnership working. And finally, just quickly to recall what we mentioned last year, attendance again is a key performance. If young people aren't at school, we can't make that positive difference. You'll recall that the stretch aims were not achieved in primary. I'm going to move on in a minute. Secondary, we have a real challenge in getting our young people into school. We've debated this in committee before. It's for a variety of reasons, and some short-term, some long-term. And I know that in the February Education Committee we plan to bring along some detail around the Learn Well service and some of the work our educational psychologists are doing in partnership with school around supporting attendance. But finally, the exciting bit, is the sort of story behind this learning and the real work that goes on in our schools, and with some of the resources we have, whether it's through our devolved budget or our strategic equity funding. But you'll have heard us talk about reading recovery, and in fact it featured in the Standards of Quality report last year. But we have 2 principal teachers of literacy who lead reading recovery within the authority, and they support staff in almost all our schools to target young people, usually in primary 2. Last session, 61 children across 8 schools worked with the reading recovery teachers, but it was a vast bigger number across every one of our primary schools. And none of those children had had more than a 5 years age of reading ability, when it should have been considerably higher. And those young people went on to increase, and you can see in terms of the pre and post inspection, in terms of book bands, which is giving children text at different graded levels. You can see they could read more challenging texts. The attainment in terms of curriculum for excellence levels went up, and we're now in the position where we have longitudinal data that shows that those young people who have experienced that support of reading recovery make greater progress than those who don't, which has enabled us to look at what the reading provision is actually in each classes. And although reading recovery is a targeted one-to-one support, what can we do for whole cohorts of classes? And we have introduced a reading recovery type approach in primary 2, and we're seeing some of that difference in terms of change over time. And we can see that young people are catching up, if not taking over their peers who have not had that support. And I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to skip on to the next slide and look at Wood Farm High, which had, committee will remember I shared at the beginning of the year, had phenomenal results in terms of supporting young people through both National 5, Higher and Advanced Higher. And when we asked the school to share what they were doing to get such tremendous results, they talked about the universal support. They talked about what every child gets in Wood Farm, but they then went on to talk about that targeted support. And we heard about digital mentoring today. S4, 5 and 6 had a mentoring programme for each of their subjects, and that was provided by senior pupils, staff, parents and the wider community. They had key interventions for groups, but I think what was really important is they tracked the impact of these, and they were very creative. We talked about the right people being on the right courses, when we talked about presentation and getting the right, putting people forward for awards that was appropriate for. They made sure their curriculum was bespoke to young people. Provided free stationery, study materials, study support sessions, how to actually study, providing them space, providing them food, providing them shelter, because some people might have younger siblings, they might have older relatives, they might share a bedroom, they might not have a study, so providing that individualised support, but then sitting and providing individual targets. And those targets weren't necessarily about achieve that National 5 award. Those targets were by this time next month I'll be able to recall, I'll be able to. And also I think really important, working with family and carers, so that they had the confidence, the skill, the knowledge to support or signpost young people. And if you follow any of our schools on Twitter, you will see that climate of ambition in Wood Farm really is growing, and it takes time, but teachers and young people persevere to never give up. And I think one of the things that I observed when I was in was actually hearing a teacher say to a young person, "I'm not giving up on you, so don't you give up." And I think it's that personalisation. And encouraging children not to withdraw from courses. Sometimes if it gets hard, and especially at prelim, if you don't get what you it's easier to maybe say, right, well, I'm not going to take that forward. Well, no, let's push on. And using that data over time to push on to make sure that if a change is required or if more support, you know when to go in. And being empowered and courageous with their decisions, both as staff and young people. And maximising that potential to see those results. And as I say, Wood Farm High had improved outcomes in every key measure this year. The values in the brackets represent the percentages. And it wasn't just on, they talk very much about partnership and about using industry, making learning real, making it relevant and driving that ambition, not just for learning in school, but learning in life. So that, yes, they got those qualifications, but they got the skills to be able to apply it in the workplace. And finally, you'll be glad to hear, they looked at widening their career pathways, making sure, so they're the only school, I think, in East Renfrewshire at the moment who've got a silver award as an SCQF ambassador, which is a different examining body but from SQA, but it gives the same insight and tariff points, so there's the same value, but sometimes the approach to that course is more hands-on, it's more vocational. So they have level 5 and 6 computer games, coding, design, but giving young people a qualification at the end of that gives them that opportunity to apply for further or higher education. And making sure that their school experience is really relevant and suitable to them. And there we have Molly doing her barista training out in the community. So intensive support, lots of hard work, knowing when to intervene and when not to. You'll see the same bubble graph that we had in ours. Again, the nationals down below, the sort of amber oranges up above. Every young people in Wood Farm, no matter where they live, outperforms the national equivalent in S4 and in S5. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Janice. I do have to say, yes, there's a large amount of information there, and quite detailed and statistical information there, and it was able to be shared prior, in some form that's appropriate to members, then it would certainly, I think, hope, and well, I'm going to ask for any questions and comments, but I think that might be potentially quite difficult given the volume, possibly. Any other members or any comments? Dorothy?
No, I just, looking at this, there's a lot of information here, but I don't think we can underestimate the impact that the lockdown had on the current S4 and S5, and I know this from family members, and in particular boys. Their motivation, the content, that this S4 and S5 were in S2 and S3 at the time of the lockdown, when it started in 2020. Their skills development, their socialisation, which has had an impact, I think, on their mental health as well. It really has been an uphill struggle for a lot of young people. It's a very crucial age, 13, 14, 15 years of age. And remember, quite rightly, the emphasis was at that time on getting pupils that were sitting exams into school and giving them work. And we quite rightly probably thought that maybe the S2s or the S3s were able to cope a bit more on their own. So I think it's a great tribute to the young people in S4 and S5 and their teachers and their families and the education department that they actually have done as well as they have. So even if there have been some measures that we might not have hit the targets, I still think it has been a tremendous amount of hard work that's gone in to achieve what they have achieved.
Thanks, Dorothy. Yes, I have to say, just in fact, obviously in relation to what I said previously, there are some wonderful things in there, and it's absolutely fantastic to see. It's just to give us more time, to digest it and maybe hopefully ask more pertinent questions of certain issues. But totally agree with you, Dorothy, absolutely. Des?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Janice, for that detailed report. I've seen that report now a few times. Every year it makes more sense and you can understand it. I will say that it is always the Education Committee meeting I make sure I've got my glasses at. But thanks for that. But and as you correctly anticipated, Janice, it is to end the work of not the pupils and the support that they've received from their families, but also notably the teachers who have provided that teaching and learning. Thanks again.
Thanks, Des. Councillor Buchanan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, just to echo some of the comments that Des made there, I think a huge amount of work and a huge amount of thanks goes out to all of our pupils, but to all of our staff working across the education sector and all of our schools at every level, because the work that has gone in to delivering these results is significant. It's been touched on, the issues of the pandemic, and I suspect, and it's right to say we know this is a cohort and we've measured those. We may well see issues in the future that have still to come to realisation, if you like, because we know that ongoing. We know there are difficulties, even going down to our nursery schools, where we know the impact of the pandemic. The pandemic has had an impact on the social skills, on the enablement of many of our children, and that's going to take some time to work through. The hope is they're at a young enough age that we get that work in place and we're able to deal with that. But we know there are difficulties that are still to come as a knock-on impact of the pandemic, and hopefully we stand ourselves in a good position to manage those as they start to arise. But really, I think it's testament to the huge amount of work that has gone in over the last few years, that work of continuous improvement that we regularly see, and that ongoing challenge is ensuring that our young people are given the best start in life, and that's critical going forward.
Great, thanks. Councillor Buchanan. Councillor Craignell.
Thanks, Janice, for this excellent presentation. As Dorothy has rightly said, these pupils that we're particularly looking at were very much impacted by COVID. I'm really looking forward to seeing the data in February about attendance. Being one of those pupils who was not at school, I think my attendance was 38% from 4th to 5th year due to ill health. I would be really interested to dive into that data. We know there's many reasons, and from my personal perspective, I don't want anyone to experience not going into school because of ill health like I did many years ago. So I very much appreciate that this is coming forward, so we can delve into that a bit deeper.
Thank you, Councillor Bagnall. Any other questions, comments? Councillor O'Donnell?
Thanks, Janice. I think all the comments about having looked at it in advance would, hopefully is taken on board, because there is a lot of content. There are a lot of very valuable content, and there's a lot of insight that can be taken out of it, but very difficult to do that when you haven't seen it in advance. And I can't even refer to which slide in terms of my comments. Thanks for bringing in the gender balance stuff. I think that's very important, and understanding that. I suppose related to that, and also the attainment gap, is that something that is a specific work piece that we should be looking at in terms of gender, or reports on that? Similarly, on the attainment gap, particularly in the primary schools, seems to be pretty stubborn, and we have discussed, we did put money in for some recovery funds on that, but it's stubborn if you go back to 2019, right? We have to be honest about this. Do we have within the Education Committee agenda a specific session on that? So it's what are we doing about it, and how are we moving that forward? Because I think it's a common aim for all of this committee to see that reduced as quickly as possible. Final point, you won't like me for this one. Some of the earlier slides, again, can't refer to them, we were actually hitting our targets, which was 3 years away already. So should we look at some of those stretch targets again? Not today, but is that something that we should consider, given that we're already hitting them? Not all of them, but most of them.
Okay. At an individual school level, we do drill down for various protected characteristics, gender being one, and it's not necessarily the same each stage per school, whatever, but we support individual schools to look at different ways that they can address that gender imbalance in terms of attainment, and some of that is linked to the professional inquiry support we give through our research hubs. So absolutely, we look at that, but in particular schools, because although we're given the whole authority, we could go into the school next door and it's not the situation, whatever. So it's that way that you don't use a broad brush to sweep. We did spend a wee bit of time talking about the literacy and numeracy support in terms of the primary sector at the last Education Committee, when we brought a progress report on the Strategic Equity Plan. But you'll recall the Strategic Equity Plan has 3 work streams, and we discussed with the convener bringing an input from each work stream. So in February it's going to be wellbeing, with a particular focus on the Learn Well service and touching on attendance. At the next one it will be either learning, teaching or literacy and numeracy, and we will provide that amount of detail about the interventions we're providing. I would say in the context that last year we got £123,000, which was very, very welcome, but when you consider some of our schools got almost double that as one school. So and we did mention that last time, that about the sort of strategic thinking about a very little resource, but I'm happy and have plans to bring that. And you're quite right that we've hit that target. We would go back and revisit it. These have been shared with schools through a consultation, but it's an aggregate target. So it's about hitting that after the 4-year period. So we wouldn't necessarily change it right away. But if we are looking at that, then we would maybe go back to schools. When we say targets, there's no ceiling on it either. And sitting under that is the school's individual targets. And we'd be saying to those schools, you've done really well, push yourself on. And that's the role of the quality improvement team as part of their support and challenge and regular visits.
Thank you, Janice. Happy with that. Councillor O'Donnell. Any other questions or comments from the committee? No, great, excellent. Okay, my PC's shut down, so I don't have the agenda. It's the reason why I tried to close the meeting a bit early there previously. But I think, thanks, Janice. Okay, and that concludes the meeting. And actually, well, it was mentioned there about obviously the next meeting being in February. We'll be looking forward to that. and so I hope everyone enjoys your festive period. I know it's quite early to tell you about that, but
Never too early.
and we'll see you all again in February. Okay, and thanks. Close the meeting. Thank you.